Okay, so moving on to our next speaker before we have another little break, depending on how I go with my time management skills. So I'm delighted to welcome technically my colleague Lauren, who works in the same building as me, but a completely different team. So we see each other passing normally in the morning when we're trying to get hot drinks and water to see us right for the rest of the day. We do something very similar in that we're very front facing, very heavily developed in skills development, but Lauren's remit is working with A-level students in terms of transitioning to universities before I get my hands on them, probably as an undergraduate. So her talk's going to be highlighting the resources development that their team has worked on and working with users' feedback in order to enrich that and helping students to succeed. So over to you, Lauren. I can see your slides are up
Fab. Thank you,
and
Louise.
I can
And
hear
thank
you perfectly. Thank you.
brilliant. And thank you to the rest of the committee for organising this. It's really exciting to be speaking. Um, so yeah, today I'm going to be talking about Newcastle University Library's provision for A-level students. So I'll let you know kind of what we do for A-level students, showcase our online study skills resources that we created in collaboration with students, and I'll be sharing our student-led strategy, so how students really were the core of the creation of these resources and how that's continuing to benefit us and seep into other things that we're doing. So for a bit of context, not every university library has this, and I know we've got different kind of libraries represented today. So I'm part of the library's education outreach team, and that's kind of our jazzy sort of headline of what we do to inspire students. But where our remit is kind of 50-50, working with our archives and special collections to engage school and college students. And then the other 50% is supporting A-level students with getting through their A-levels and transitioning into university. And that's kind of what I'm talking about today. The rest of it's lovely, but today's focus is the sixth form. So our kind of brand, our sort of title for our A-level offer is sixth form study skills, and it comes in three forms. We have our online resources, which is the main focus of today, but we also deliver workshops. My colleague Jackie's on the call. She does a lot of our lovely sixth form workshops. And we do CPD for school and college staff as well. So our online resources take the form of a bespoke website for A-level students. So we have over 40 resources on there that cover 8 core skills areas alongside a glossary of terms that bust academic jargon that A-level students might not be familiar with. It sits alongside a student-written blog, so we worked with students to write about their experience of developing their study skills through their A-levels and transitioning into university. It's kind of not just what we say, but that actually students have been there, done that, and you know we're not fibbing when we say you need these study skills. And we also have a partner website for new undergraduate students that looks suspiciously similar, because we acknowledge that over the 6 weeks holidays, a student who's just finished their A-levels doesn't magically develop all of their study skills over the summer. And we want to level the playing field, whether a student is doing their A-levels or just landed at university and using those skills. So this is where it gets complicated. Let's see if this still lets me share my screen. Um, this is our website. So I won't spend a long time dwelling on it, but just to show you around. So we have some of the core skills you'd expect from a library, research and reading and referencing. And we also have things like writing, revision, communication. Our resources take lots of different forms. So we've got in each page a variety of things. We've got quizzes, we've got videos, we've got interactive resources. We have lots of stuff that we've created in collaboration with other teams. For example, our referencing resources were created with Louise's team, our library liaison team, and our healthy study habits resources, which were created with student health and wellbeing. As I said, we've got a glossary of terms full of jargon that students might not be familiar with. A lot of these were a surprise to me. I took for granted that students might know some of these terms, and in fact they didn't. And as I said, we've got a student blog, so the users can access the blog at the top, but in each of our skills areas, we have one of the blogs pinned at the bottom. So for example, down here, we've got Tom's blog post on research skills, and it's just our student interns who worked with us providing their experience of developing these skills through their A-levels and into university. Like I said, we have a very suspiciously similar looking website for our undergraduates. The resources that were created were duplicated with different language. So, for example, during your A levels, etc., versus during your first year at university. And as I said, that's to level the playing field to make sure students can access these resources at the point of need, whether it's during their A levels or when they arrive at Newcastle. So that was a very whistle stop tour of the website, but I didn't want to sort of tour around the entire thing. But it didn't come from nowhere. So our team had a lot of requests for support with A-level students doing coursework or extended project qualifications, and started delivering workshops and had a website. And the original website, as you can see, I appreciate it's quite small in the screenshot, started with your quite traditional library skills. So using a library, finding resources, evaluating them and referencing. And obviously you can see on the right there, the website has grown significantly, but this did not happen overnight, and it's really important to acknowledge that. This came through a collaborative student-led project that took place over 2 years, and importantly, there was funding attached to this. So it's to acknowledge that a lot of work and a lot of time went into this, and it wasn't just something that everyone managed to squeeze in alongside their busy day jobs. We were also backed by an advisory group, so that was a cross-university library group and advisory group, and we were also supported by members of school and college staff, so we had teachers and school librarians involved. And also as part of that project, we had a dedicated project coordinator, which was me. But throughout that 2 year period, I was dedicated to making sure that the project happened and that the websites were published. So we know it's kind of out of the ordinary for those of you who work in academic libraries to have the time to be able to do that. And most importantly, we had time built into the project to research and to create, to work with students to find out what we needed to do before we did it. And for me, what has been a real success of the project is we also had evaluation built into the project from the start. So all of the things that we did, all of the steps that we took to make sure these websites could be the best they could possibly be, was evaluated independently by a colleague in the School of Education. And she wasn't in the project, she was outside of the project. She observed, she came to meetings, she took each member of staff at the end of the project for a big interview and our student interns to find out how it had gone, and wrote us a very lengthy evaluation report and an impact report, which we've been able to disseminate and prove that it hopefully was worth all of the work that we did. So when I keep mentioning our student interns and how we worked with students, I thought it was good to share our student-led approach. So we took a user-led approach to resource creation. And what that meant for us is way back in the beginning of the project, we started with focus groups with A-level and undergraduate students to find out what issues they were facing with their study skills. So for A-level students, they were in the thick of their A-levels, they were doing it right there and then. What were they most worried about? And undergraduate students, what did you struggle with during your A-levels, and what did you struggle with most when you started university? We also backed this up with interviews with teachers and academics to make sure that what they were saying lined up with what students were saying. And we asked students what kind of resources would help them with their study skills. And we found a real array of resources, things we hadn't considered before. Certain students said that they would prefer to learn this information in this form, but this information in this form. And it was really useful. And that helped us plot our roadmap for the rest of the project. Then when we created our resources, we went back to students and did user testing. So we gave them our resources, gave them a big survey, and they said, right, have a go, let us know what you think. So we got feedback that way as well. And then we had 4 student interns involved throughout alongside staff. So they attended meetings, contributed to discussions, they were in our project team. So that was how involved students were for us. So student interns contributed something really meaningful, developed their skills at the same time, and provided us with this new way of working. But actually, even though it was lighter touch, our user testing students were just as important because they gave us positive feedback to reinforce that we are on the right track, some critical feedback for us to consider and make changes, but that actually all of that feedback has helped inform our future work. So to give you an example of this, some of the positive feedback helped us identify trends. So we noticed a trend in the feedback from students that when we had videos that featured real students, that the student feedback was very, very positive. So now when we're creating videos for other projects, for other students, we might think, right, we're going to start with students. It's worth having students in these videos. But the same can be said for the negative feedback as well. We had a resource called Conventions of Academic Writing, and that resource we took for granted. We said Conventions of Academic Writing because this resource is about conventions of academic writing. And actually, that term conventions really confused a lot of students, both undergraduate and A-level students. And we realised, okay, maybe we made an assumption there, and we changed the name of that resource to Features of Academic Writing. And now a lot of us would actually think twice about using the word conventions when working with A-level students or new undergraduates. All of this feedback doesn't stop with the website though. So the website is done, the website is there, but it's actually feeding into other things that we do as well. So like I said, in outreach, we do workshops for A-level students who are completing coursework, big projects like an EPQ, for example, and we deliver them at the university so students can come in, use the library's resources, or we can do it online or in school. And they can also join the library. Now, our workshops cover some of the key kind of library skills that are captured in our original website. So finding information, evaluating it, using information and referencing, the kind of skills that students need to complete a long piece of work, so a big essay for their coursework or their extended project. But now that we have this website, we've got all of these other skills areas available to us, and we're only really using these two. So from all of that student input we had way back when that was meant to be for building this website, we're now using that information to help us expand our workshop offer as well. And we're now trialing workshops covering some other skills areas as well, which is a really exciting move for our team. As I mentioned earlier, we also offer CPD for school and college staff. And really having this website has made this possible for us. We know that study skills provision in A-level settings, it is hard to squeeze into the day when you've got so much exam content. So for us, we were able to do bespoke CPD for schools that allows us to demo our resources. So a teacher or a librarian doesn't have to go and search these all themselves, spend time playing with them. We can go, look, here's where everything is that you need. But we can do that using real life examples of effective practice because we've spent 2 years working with students and we've heard them say, this would be really good if I was doing X, or this would have been really useful when I was doing Y. So we can look at that A-level student journey, go through the resources with teachers and college staff. And most importantly, we build in time for discussion and reflection because we don't often give ourselves permission in A-level settings to stop and think and reflect. So it's really, really important that we include that within our CPD. And we wouldn't have learned that without working with our teachers through this project as well. So it's been really influential on the other parts of our offer as well. So to summarise some of the lessons that we learned through this project, creating this website, the big one has been never make assumptions, and that applies to working with A-level students, but applies to anything really. Like I said, with the conventions of academic writing, we made this huge assumption that every A-level student and every new undergraduate would have heard of that word, and they hadn't. So never make assumptions, I would say. My second lesson learned was to really listen to students and those who work closely with them. So school librarians, school teachers, personal tutors at university, student well-being, whoever it is, whatever student, whatever audience you're working with, listen to them and the people around them because they'll tell you what they need and they're very, very forthcoming in letting you know. And likewise with resources, students were very comfortable to tell us when things didn't work or the language that we used wasn't quite right, and that has been endlessly helpful for us. Another thing is to empower students to take charge of their own learning. Students don't always necessarily want their hand holding. They want to be given everything that they need so that they can choose what they need. So we created this self-serving website where students can go on and find what they need. And that in itself is a skill to learn independently, to get into their browser, find the resources that they need, use them and improve their skills independently. And finally, it's not one size fits all. You can't please everybody. And I think we were so focused on making everything perfect for every student. Actually, we know that this resource over here is perfect for these kinds of students, but this resource over here will work for these students. And providing variety has been the biggest win for us because we know that hopefully something somewhere will be useful for a student to successfully complete their A-levels and transition off into university wherever they choose to go. Hopefully Newcastle, but wherever they like. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Lauren. That's really, really good overview, and it keeps me up to date with all the work that you've been doing as well. So, starting off with some questions, we've got how did you select the student interns?
So the student interns were advertised via our university careers service. So we wrote a job description like you would at any job, and we advertised. We had applications, and everyone who applied was interviewed. The interviews took place with myself and one member of staff from academic skills, which is our academic skills team in the library, and one member of staff from education outreach. So we interviewed them, asked them some quite sort of general questions, and that's how that went. It was quite standard, I would say.
And then the million-dollar question is where did the funding come from?
Yes. So the project before my role existed, before the 2 year project, it was funded by there was a pilot for a year that was funded with a smaller amount from internal funding at the university, the Education Enhancement Fund, and then the follow on project was also funded internally. If it were to happen now, maybe not so much, but yeah, it was all internal, and we're very lucky to have a very supportive senior team around us who were happy to support us in that funding as well.
And then there's a question about promotion. So, how do A-level students become aware of the resources and the website? How does it work?
So we're really lucky locally. We have fantastic relationships with school and college staff around the northeast, and we have newsletter comms, a mailer, and we spend a lot of our time pushing things to them. So hopefully that the teachers point them out. But we naturally, with the previous website, had a really decent number of hits, and we don't know how or why, and it just kind of happened. So the website, we do our best efforts on open days at the university to spread the word. Any opportunities like this, we come and talk because it's the staff that really pass things on. Any student who comes to visit us finds out. So when we're doing workshops and things like that, they find out about the website. But it is one of those things that it naturally is very thankfully has managed to get out there. I would say though our biggest audience is our local audience because we speak to them, and the teachers and the librarians do that work for us.
Fantastic. Well, there's some lovely comments in the chat about how inspirational the project is. And, maybe I take it for granted that we have a fantastic outreach team doing all of this work. But I know that we are very, very unique, not just within the Northeast, but obviously throughout the UK as well. So it's fantastic that we've got a website that you've shared already with the resources. Someone's asked for access to the impact report. You might want to double check, Lauren, that I've linked to the right URL on our website in case I'm highlighting the wrong report, because there was a question about access to that specific report that you mentioned. But that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.